Hello, everyone. Welcome to the second day of Memphis Indie Talks, supported by the Hohenberg Foundation. Thank you for joining us today. Today, our topic is on embodiment in digital spaces, and I'll be introducing our panelists shortly. But first, let me say if you're watching on any of our other outlets, Eventive or YouTube or Facebook, if you have questions for us, for panelists, please go ahead and put them in the comments and we'll make sure to ask them. They'll get to me and I'll be sure to ask them in the Q&A portion. The Indie Memphis Film Festival is presented by Duncan Williams, Inc. And the IndieTalks portion has always been graciously supported by the Hohenberg Foundation. So thank you to both those sponsors, in particular the Hohenberg Foundation, for today's event. Let's get on with the panelists. It's my great pleasure to introduce a longtime Indie Memphis supporter and one of the biggest movers and shakers in the digital festival realm, who we are so pleased to call a friend, Ido Pat. As co-founder of Eventive, Ido has been on a mission to provide more and more people with access to a better and better independent film experience. With the launch of Eventive Virtual in 2020, the platform now serves over 600 festivals and organizations around the world, creating virtual and in-person cinema experiences. Ido has a unique vantage point on the rapid transition to digital spaces. Ido's prior experience as an independent filmmaker and film producer, a founding board member of Indie Memphis, and work as a commercial director and producer have all informed the work that he and Eventive team are doing to connect audiences, organizers, and filmmakers in meaningful ways. Thank you, Ido, for being here today with your incredibly busy schedule.
Thank you, Miriam. It's really special to get to join you for this panel. Thanks for inviting me. Hey, Billy.
Wonderful. And then our second panelist is Danette Wolpart. She is the founder and executive director of the Illuminate Film Festival. Prior to building Illuminate, Danette spent 10 years in film production, programming, and festival management. She most recently spent 5 years as associate director of the Miami International Film Festival. She served as the director of the Washington, D.C.-based screening room and in management and/or programming roles for both the Washington and Sedona Jewish Film Festivals. Before festival life, Danette was a senior management consultant for Ernst & Young, where she provided financial management and technology solutions for Fortune 500 clients. Danette is the recipient of the National Association for Women Business Owners 2016 Visionary Award for Entrepreneurial Excellence. Thank you for being here today, Danette.
Thanks, Miriam. I'm glad to be here.
Great. Well, let's get into the conversation. I think before we get started, Danette, can you please tell us a little bit more about Illuminate and how you came to be involved in it?
Well, sure. Illuminate is dedicated to elevating consciousness and inspiring lasting transformation through cinema. And it's quite a unique mission, as I've been in the film festival world for, like you said, over a decade, and felt over the years that I personally wanted to align my purpose with my skills and my passion for film. And I saw an opening for the intersection, right, between the elevation of consciousness and mind, body, spirit, and enhancing our human potential with this incredible vehicle of the moving image, right? Because through the moving image, we can not only just see, but we can hear and we can feel. And through these character journeys, we can really become more aware of our own. And so that is what propelled me to found Illuminate after being in many other spaces, technology and management consulting. and organizational effectiveness. So it's been a really incredible ride, and I feel really called to enhance the human journey this way.
Wonderful, thank you. And Ito, can you tell us a little bit? I discussed Eventive and your role in it and your connection to Indie Memphis in the intro, but can you tell us a little bit more about your year since March?
Yeah. So, and that's a great place to start, which is that at Eventive, which my son Theo actually was my co-founder and essentially built originally as a ticketing platform for Indie Memphis back in 2015. We had been working primarily with film festivals around the world, helping them provide access to their in-person festivals through an online platform. And at the beginning of March this year, it became clear to us that festivals were not going to be able to host in-person physical events. And so we started looking for a solution to provide our festival partners, and basically decided to build a streaming platform on top of our ticketing and pass management platform for festivals. Built it out very quickly, and actually Danette and Illuminate was one of the first festivals to sign up for Eventive Virtual. I think we first talked back in April. Is that right?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
Way in the beginning,
Yeah.
during our, like the first pivot, right? The first stage of pivot.
Exactly, and along with Indie Memphis and a few others, but since then we've had, as you read, over 600 organizations have signed up to use the virtual side of the platform, and it's given us a chance to really think about, well, what does it mean, especially for audiences and for filmmakers, to connect in this new and unprecedented way and time in a space where everything had really been about coming together in person, right? That sort of felt like the most meaningful aspect of the film festival experience for a long time, was that we could come together as a community and with filmmakers. And so we've really been thinking a lot about how do we keep that sense of connection alive in this virtual space.
Wow, great. And so let's talk about that April time when you two collaborated. Danette, tell us what is an Illuminate Film Festival? This happens in May, June, is that right? Around May, June.
Yeah.
So normally May, June, you would have sorry, I think someone's doing some work in my neighborhood. I can hear a drill. Is there normally you would the festival would happen in May, June, and tell us what a non-COVID year at your festival looks like, and how you tried to pivot, how you tried to replicate that in a virtual space.
So every year we have a 5-day festival in May, June here in Sedona, Arizona, which is sort of a destination point for, kind of the mind, body, spirit, industry. There's a lot of beauty here, and there's a lot of metaphysical resources, and around every corner there's also some kind of healing business. And that's essentially sort of what brought me here, because I was on my own personal vision quest. So when I thought about integrating the world of film, into the world of personal development, we really thought long and hard about what that would look like from a film programming standpoint. So every year we curate, 25 of what we think are the best conscious films of the year, and we pair them in many cases with something that we call a real healing, REEL healing, and the purpose of that is to enable our audiences to more deeply integrate the message of a film into their mind, into their body, into, you know, their soul, and into their life, essentially. So, I mean, how many times have we walked out of a theater and been so incredibly inspired, you know, and you're relating it to your life, and you're like, this is what I want to do now, and this is the change that I want to make. And by the time you've gotten to your car, you have gotten a cell phone call, and, you know, your kids are complaining about something, or they're fighting, or, you know, and you just lose everything that you kind of just promised yourself. You know, you kind of lose the momentum of the film sometimes. So by instituting a real healing program at Illuminate, we really gave people the time to be in the theater together after the film to do an actual immersive experience, whether that might be a meditation, whether that might be an emotional healing technique, whether that might be an art experience in a theater where we could actually move the chairs. We've had an ecstatic dance experience and a movement experience. We've had a yoga experience. In some cases, we even took the folks outside of the theater for either a hike, you know, or for mindful walking. All of these things, of course, were part of the film itself, and we just gave everybody an actual experience of what they were watching. So that was the festival before COVID. And of course, when we had to cancel the 2020 festival, we really had to think long and hard about how we can have those experiences virtually. And thanks to Ito and Eventive, we were able to quickly do that, and you know, just be able to leverage that platform to engage with people, you know, in a program where they can watch a film and then connect with us directly, you know, through talks like these, and through you know, engagement with master teachers, in order to give them that immersive experiential you know, part of the program.
We're not hearing you.
Okay. I'd love to hear more about those details in a moment. But Ito, I'd like to ask you, so that was in May, June, and we've seen a lot of film festivals. We are in the midst of a film festival. What is arising what kind of tools have you developed since Eventive platform first launched in April? I think in April it launched. What tools have you launched to create a sense of community? I think we're all enjoying great films, but there's possibility often for people to be watching these films at different time. How has Eventive evolved to help create a sense of community? Can you give me any examples?
Yeah, and it's a great question, because when you think about it, we've already become accustomed to streaming video on our televisions, and so how do we keep a film festival experience from just being, you know, oh, I'm just watching something else on TV? And so one part of that is just adding the live streaming component, which everybody who is watching this panel on Eventive is experiencing that Eventive live stream and having the opportunity to interact with the chat, hopefully, and ask questions. Along with the sort of scheduled screenings on demand and the open screenings on demand. Recently, so a couple of months ago, we added something we call real-time broadcast, which is the ability to actually create a shared screening experience using on-demand content. And so that's a screening that goes out in real time, can have the possibility of a live chat alongside. And so these events have happened at very different scale. We've had some that have, 10,000 people, and we've had some that are very intimate and actually still very meaningful events that maybe have 25 or 30 people. And I think the key for every festival and every organizer, I think, is creating a mix of different kind of events in the virtual space. And also for me, I'm thinking a lot about, well, what for all of us, who are working remotely in different ways, which I guess is huge number of people today. We're spending a lot of our time just talking to people on screens, and I'm realizing that I for me personally, there's a huge difference in the experience of speaking with someone I've never met before in person, and then actually talking to somebody whom I know, who is a friend, who is a connection that we've shared through physical proximity. And so there's an open question, I think, of how to create that feeling, and also how to evoke those feelings, right? What kinds of sensory tricks can we use as organizers? What kinds of tools can we use to ground each other in a shared space?
Really fascinating, especially the reminder of that, of people who have shared space together and that feel like a reconnecting. You instantly, I guess, have the memory of that connection and that real life vibe. While with new people, it feels like a give and take, like a share of energy, like a sort of push and pull of energy, sort of. It feels like it's interesting. Yeah, I think there's so many questions, and we've just gotten started. And I'm I'm curious, Danette, for some of your events, did you find that it was, for instance, like a meditation or a yoga practice? Was it things that people did on their own or collectively, or did it vary?
So it's what's been really interesting is figuring out, how to be able to, maximize personal transformation in this digital space, and what audience preferences are, because sort of going into this, our first few programs on Eventive were all experienced together. So in other words, the series that we started out with during the pivot, right? I think it was maybe May, right, Ido?
Yeah.
Where we offered our first series. And, it was really funny because I was like, Ido, can we do this? Can we do that? Can we do this? Can we do that? Because, and the whole reason why, I was pushing certain functionality, which obviously they have eventually embraced and is now available on the platform, was so that we could experience something together. And, for a festival like ours, we're really in sort of kind of this collective state of transformation together. That becomes a very important component, right? Through the technology, to be able to be experiencing this together. So the first series was all kind of broadcast together. We had, some intros, and we had some engagement with the audience, so we could get people sort of prepared, right? And have the audience become more aware of what they're about to watch and their own personal state. And then to watch the film, and while they were watching the film, actually, be able to connect with each other about the experience they were having. And of course, there's a huge debate out there over whether this is the ideal way to watch a movie, because some festival organizers are concerned that it's distracting from the movie, and others say, well, this is really contributing to this shared experience, since we're not in a theater and we want to feel like we're part of something. So then people watched the movie and were able to connect. And I got to tell you that this was something that the filmmakers really appreciated, because after the fact, we could, kind of copy and paste and send them this discussion, and actually get a window into the world of the minds of our audience, and what parts of the film uplifted them, and what parts of the film, made them question something and ask because you can't turn to your neighbor inside of a theater and be like, well, what do you think of that part, of that scene? Because everybody would tell you to shush, right? And so this is just a way for us to really kind of sense where our audience is at. And that's valuable for both the film festival and the filmmaker. And then after that part, we actually moved into the immersive part of the program. And so in some cases, it was meditation. We had Alan Cohen, I think, with our first film. And then in other cases, we really encouraged people to use their bodies, right? Like a real full embodiment of the joy that was generated from this film. And this was Michael Franti's film, Stay Human. And we invited Michael Franti to come on and essentially, lead us through, he told us all to get up. He told us all to dance. He told us all to express exactly what they were feeling after watching the film. And that whole experience from beginning to end was entirely transformational. I can't tell you how many people in the audience survey just said, wow, we were down in the dumps, from quarantine and, from everybody's businesses shutting down and all the fear and uncertainty from COVID. And this really kind of brought people to a state of joy and freedom that they hadn't experienced in several weeks.
That's wonderful. Something that you just said about filmmaker feedback was really interesting, and I was about to say illuminating. I better not. That's too.
Good word. Good word.
It is a good word, but that's we were hearing. We had the advantage of being now in October and hearing a lot of feedback. On the way to get here, we heard filmmakers, the main complaint was that, they were reaching a lot of people, but they couldn't feel who they were reaching. They couldn't see who they were reaching. There was a long sort of tirade that one of our favorite filmmakers, Tony Oswald, went on social media, not a tirade, but a really genuine criticism. And we shared that in our staff meeting and made sure that he felt like he wasn't connecting with the audience. He had no idea who was watching it. He didn't feel like he was connecting with other filmmakers. So we went out of our way to kind of make sure to address that. I'd like to ask Ido about that. But before we get there, I also want to comment what you said about the chat and the controversy. I think Ido also mentioned in a different conversation about this function that often Black theaters, there'll be a lot of talk back to the screen, and that there's already a very solid tradition of that kind of engagement. So Ido, can you talk to us a little bit about how to measure that engagement? How have you seen that filmmakers are able to understand who's watching their film and what they're thinking?
It's a great question. I think one of the main reasons that we actually built the platform was because there wasn't a tool that would allow a festival and organizer to combine an on-demand screening and a Q&A, a chat, a live stream like this into one screening. And I think that's such a crucial combination. And what's been really helpful is that it can be in real time, and then it can also be stretched out over time, right? So as you've seen, these live streams can then be viewed later, and people can participate in the chat later. And so what I've seen is that we see a lot of filmmakers, having this initial Q&A and then coming back and joining and seeing conversations that people are having in the chat alongside. But really anything to kind of create that sense of togetherness and shared space. A big part of that for me too is just really being able to evoke physical places, right? Like Danette, I when we talk and when I think about Illuminate, I think of being in Sedona, and it happens that I was in Sedona a couple of years ago for Sedona Film Festival, and met a couple of folks in a little shop who were involved with Illuminate. So that was how I first heard
No
about
kidding.
the
I didn't know
festival. Yeah, yeah. Um, and it's such a beautiful and unique place, in the same way that Memphis is such a beautiful and unique and specific place. And so being able to find these sort of moments of specificity, even if it's like just putting in little bits of pre-roll before a screening that kind of grounds you in the space of the festival somehow. It doesn't just have to be, oh, here are our sponsors. It's here's where we are watching this movie together, right? Just sort of simulating that experience. I'm not sure if I answered the question, Miriam. Sorry.
No, you totally did. I mean, I think there's no
Yeah.
right answer. We're all figuring
Yeah.
this out. So you absolutely answered the question in an engaged and creative way, which is all I can ask. We did just use the this function, the real-time watch, for showing an installation piece by a filmmaker, Christopher Yogi, and we used the post roll. We used what would normally link a shorts block with a meditation prompt. So we didn't use it in the pre-roll, but we did it with the post, and it was interesting. It was seamless, and a very interesting experience. I want to ask you both. We're talking about sort of events. We're talking a lot about meditations and groundings and this idea of embodiment, but there's other kinds of embodiments. One of the key aspects of film festivals are parties and social functions, and and I think this is one of the most challenging aspects to replicate. I'd like to ask you both, Danette, at your festival and other festivals you've attended, and Ido, just at festivals generally, how have people successfully been able to create that social element of a film festival?
Well, I think I'm going to let Ido go first, because our actual virtual festival is this May. We've just been doing year-round monthly screenings and programs, and so we have not aced this yet. And I'm going to be looking to Ido for his best advice.
Sounds good.
So I think food and beverages are always a key part of every festival experience. So one of my favorite, I've brought a little visual aid here, and then maybe later we'll get to taste it too. Aglyph in Austin had a whiskey tasting along with a screening of a film, The Capote Tape. So they called it the Capote Taste. It was with bourbon and chocolate, sponsored by local purveyors and producers. And I think about so food and beverage and music, right? And one of my favorite things about Indie Memphis has always been that we start every screening with live and in-person music. And so see a lot of festivals who have been able to create parties, right? And shared spaces around parties. And I think people discovered this spontaneously, right? With, early on in the quarantine this year, a lot of people were getting together for cocktail hour on Zoom. And anything that you can do to sort of bridge that gap with tactile or sensual experiences, I think is really important.
Great. I just want to also comment, Danette, I'm really inspired by what you said earlier. I feel like that this conversation is specifically about this COVID era, but that there are so many lessons we can take after, if there is an after, but I think there will be when we get back to the other way of interacting. When you talked about people seeing a movie and then not, needing to engage with it somehow, my mind immediately went to documentary film festivals. I've been to so many documentary film festivals where people watch cause after cause, an interesting thing, and then they're just taking in information, but there's not a sense of how can I engage with this topic? How can I do something? And so I think that lesson that you're talking about within a spiritual realm can be absolutely taken up in the documentary world, especially with engagement. So I want to know, Danette, like, what are you thinking about, like what happens after the film festival? How do people, I know you do year-round activities as well, but once people see these films and have an experience, how are you keeping a sense of community engagement?
That's a great question, Miriam, because it's the question that's on the top of our minds always. And because of this, pivot to digital, we are kind of merging into both a cinematic and educational, kind of curatorial offering. So in other words, once we kind of provide a hopefully inspiring cinematic experience, we then are turning to a long-term digital educational offering. So we tried this actually before COVID, back in 2018, when we had an in-person festival, and it was a film called Miracle Morning, and it was about this process, this 1 hour process that that you can engage in the morning to basically change the trajectory of your day. And if you did this every morning, you would ultimately change the trajectory of your life. And so we offered the opportunity for Hal Elrod, who was the subject of the film, the producer of the film, and the author of his book series, right, called The Miracle Morning. We offered them a digital course, basically. It was 7 days. And this was something that the community could engage in together. And this was an experiment. We thought, okay, well, this is, again, not your typical film festival offering. And I got to tell you, it was the most incredible thing. Because long after the festival ended, I would be in the grocery store. Now, about half of our audience is local, and half of our audience comes from over 35 states and 15 countries. But, the community that it actually creates here, even after the festival, it's a lot of fun. I could not go to the grocery store without somebody coming up to me and saying, "Oh my God, I'm on day such and such of the Miracle Morning course. And I can't even believe, how I'm doing this now and I'm doing that now. And I feel so good. I feel so healthy. And I'm, and so this is the power of film, and it's the power of embodying, right? That's the word we're using today, embodying the film and what the message of the film is communicating. So this is where we're going now. And we're kind of in the next phase of that, where we're offering a lot of different real healings kind of just after the film, but then now we're looking into longer term immersive experiences that are digital courses per se. And so what we've started to dabble in these last couple months are things like we had a film called Chasing the Present, which was about a young man who had it all. He was young and he was entrepreneurial and he was had a lot of success with hotels and restaurants, and he was overwhelmed with anxiety, and he went on this kind of vision quest to figure out, why am I anxious, and how do I get through my life, without this tension, and what are the sources of it? And so we've now provided real healings about tapping, which I don't know if anybody knows. It's called emotional freedom technique. It's now scientifically proven through clinical trials to bring down stress and bring down anxiety. And so, audiences get to do that either together or on their own. And that lives long after the festival, right? Because if you're inspired to do something by this film, you're like, I'm that guy. I have everything going for me, but I wake up in a sweat, thinking about all the things I have to accomplish, or, you know, how am I going to make money now that my business has crashed, or, you know, these family relationships are so traumatic. And then you're, you know, it's that change or that resource becomes a real part of your life. And I have a couple other examples. We've done sound journeys, we've done breath work, and we've done self-care practices, which, you know, involves things like laughing, etc. And also, once again, connection with nature. All of these things are tools that will live long after the festival. And so now it's our challenge to be able to create a course offering that may be, who knows, 3 months long, in order to, again, inspire lasting transformation.
Great. Ito, well, one more thing about the social that I'd like to just comment and wonder if either of you have experienced is that we were wondering, we have something called the Black Creators Forum, which is specifically about a sort of networking and educational event for 2 days. And usually the heart of it is this lobby space where people are just randomly meeting and networking. And so in order to replicate that, we tried Zoom breakout rooms this year. And what ended up happening is people were having very intentional connections with people they might not have met otherwise. I think that we're finding that you have to be more intentional about these, but the breadth of who you can reach and how and why is very different and very exciting. I think there are new networks that can be formed. I'm wondering if you've experienced any of this, either of you, in our new virtual Zoom lives.
Yeah, I think we really are just at the beginning, even though in some ways it feels like it's been going on for a long time. We're really just at the beginning of this transformation. It's hard to say where we will end up, but I keep thinking about the Indie Memphis mission, creating community through independent film, part 1, and part 2, encouraging the development of filmmakers, and the thing that works the best is to try lots and lots of different things, right? I mean, that there is no one answer, right? And we're within our communities, we have so much individual diversity, and people are going to respond. The same person is even going to respond to different things on a different day. I agree, Miriam. The Zoom breakout room and the ability to have direct conversations is a really, really important part. And then sometimes people don't want to have direct conversations, right? Sometimes people just want to sit back and watch something and maybe come back the next day and comment in some kind of a text-based format. And so I think it's really important to find ways to offer all of those things in what feels like a shared space, So experimentation is the most important thing that we can all do, and just try. And that's what we're doing as a platform, as well as we're constantly trying new ideas and new things, and we're guided by our organizers. I mean, Danette brought us so many great ideas in May, and you see all these different things on the platform now. And so we're just trying to look and listen and observe and come up with new ideas and ways to interact.
Well,
and I'll jump in real quick and say, it's not always predictable. We sent out a survey, asking folks like what is their, what's their main priority in terms of the way that they want to watch. And we just assumed, actually, that especially for our audience, that the number one priority would be engaging with the audience, right? Because at our physical festival, that's what everybody loves the most. They call it the Illuminate magic. And it's just about being with this like-minded community who all believes, right, in something bigger than themselves, and that we're all aiming towards this better humanity together. And when we were planning, we're like, that's the one thing that we have to replicate. And then we get a survey back, and it says, number one priority is flexibility time of day that I can watch something.
Oh.
And we thought, that's a head scratcher, because, that means that this audience is perfectly prepared to do all of these, immersive experiences on their own when they can. And so then that just brought on, okay, so we got to really look at the evolution of this, and how do we offer that flexibility, but yet also offer this community engagement, and some, of course, still say, I want to do the whole thing with the community. And others say, well, no, I want to watch the movie when I want to watch the movie, because I have to squeeze it in between, bathing my kids and, the 2 hours I have to talk to my wife or my husband, and, my work day at home, and everything's distracting. And, here's the only time I get. And so some people want to watch the film then, but then they really do want that integrative experience for the Q&A or for the real healing. But it's, I think, harder for people to really find a 2.5 hour, block in their schedule, right, to do this experience from beginning to end. So, we're really having to adapt. We're really having to get feedback from our audience. We've never sent so many surveys out, but we're really trying to listen.
So smart. Yeah, I think we've found we've never had so much time, so we've never been so overscheduled. I think we're definitely hitting that part, and those are new challenges. We've been talking a lot about social connections, embodiment, wellness, embodiment, but I'm also really curious about Ido, you've been working more directly with artists and with distributing their material. And I'm wondering if either of you, especially Ido, I know you probably haven't had time to watch much since you've been so busy organizing, but if you've seen any filmmakers or sort of combination filmmaker artists using an installation type experience to really utilizing what the digital realm can do in ways that they couldn't have done in a theater, for instance. And I also just comment, after the Christopher Yogi event that we did today, I let one of his biggest fans, the critic Richard Brody, know we were doing it. And he reminded me that we did an event with Zia Anger a couple of years ago, which was a live performance and comment on her films, which she then transitioned to an online experience in a very interesting, different way. And he said that live performances will be the future of independent filmmaking. So, I wonder if you have a comment on that, or on the question about if you've seen any artists and filmmakers utilize technology in any interesting ways.
Yeah, we have.
Yeah, we have.
And I think there's a lot of that. Is good. I'm getting a little feedback here.
I think it's good now.
Yeah, is a lot of that is done through some of these traditional arts institutions that are trying new things. So, for instance, the Getty Museum has hosted a number of these immersive experiences on the platform. Portland Institute of Contemporary Arts had something called Time-Based Arts Festival, and really trying to take advantage of this mixture. A lot of things around dance and movement, especially, and maybe short films around dance, coupled with discussions, coupled with then I was trying to think about the specifics. Just a lot of stuff around the dance and movement space. It's just, again, it will just be really interesting to see how folks adapt to this. But there are people that you may not even think of as filmmakers necessarily who are doing it.
That's so fascinating. We're all filmmakers now, aren't we? We're all autobiographical. Yeah.
That's exactly right.
And I'll jump in to say that film has become a part of, like, an important part of every other art, because we're in this digital space. I was just watching a collective, a dance collective performance. And what I noted, because there were, I think, 8 different dance companies participating, what I noted was that the ones that I enjoyed the most, right, were the ones that were filmed well, right? So if somebody had a camera just at the back of a theater and they had a static shot of the stage where the dance company was performing, it was far less engaging than a company that had a 3-camera shoot and had close-ups and then had angles and then had the big, broad static shot. And that the best performance, I thought, out of the 8 companies was clearly a dance. And by the way, it was not even done on a stage. This one was done in various rooms of a house, and they were moving from one room to another, and it was incredibly engaging. And I think, even in a theater, we would never be able to have that kind of experience, in a dance performance, because we'd be sitting in a seat and we'd be watching one stage. And here we had the ability to move with these performers and watch them as they danced from one room to another. And the filming of it was terrific. And I think that is now going to become a much more important part of all of the arts in terms of how we get to view them.
Yeah. Wow, it's so true. The intersection of film, digital spaces, and embodiment has so many crossovers at this point. Well, I'll take this opportunity to turn to questions. The first question is for you, Danette, from Facebook. Could you compare your in-person fest to this year's digital version as far as interest or involvement from audiences?
So, well, what I'm excited to say is that in going digital, and I think most film festivals have experienced that they've broadened their audience. So, previously, in order to get to Illuminate, especially if you are, from Europe or Asia or Australia, you'd have to pay a pretty hefty price, right, for a plane ticket, for your hotel rooms, for all of your meals, etc. And so it obviously limited the audience to those who are so passionate about conscious media. Now we're even figuring out how to adapt our marketing, because now, we could be doing a food film, right? That's just about health. And we could reach an entire audience, global audience, of food fans, right, who are trying to get healthy through diet, nutrition, etc. Whereas they might not be interested in mindfulness or spirituality or, native indigenous wisdom or any of the other things that we program. And so that person would never come to the festival, but they absolutely would engage, right, in a digital festival. So that's really, really exciting. And just in our first few programs, we've absolutely seen a much more diverse audience geographically. We've also, luckily, seen our core audience move to digital. Now, we were not sure about that because we've also heard of other festivals that have a non-technical savvy audience, or, an aging audience that's just not as familiar and not as comfortable, right, with virtual programming. And it is true that there is a subsection of the audience that just isn't comfortable moving into digital quite yet. And I think it's going to take some repetition and getting them, maybe even some new technology, right? If they have computers that are 10 years old, they're going to have trouble watching. So there is some, challenges in terms of transitioning the audience. But luckily, I think a lot of our audience is quite used to some kind of wellness programming that is online, that is digital. And I don't even mean just film wise, but they might be going to Deepak Chopra's, workshop, and, a lot of it is on video. So we're lucky in the sense we've gotten, about an average of 300 folks per film if it's about $15, right? Because it includes some kind of immersion, and about double that for free programs. And I just hope that we kind of, increase from there. I've certainly heard of some films that have kind of burst onto the scene digitally. Most recently, one called Infinite Potential, which is about the interconnection of science and spirituality. And they had, I think, 100,000 people engage in their film. It was for free, globally, over the course of, I think, 2 to 3 months. So there's great potential here.
That's amazing. And Ido, a question for you. What has been the feedback, also from Billy, what has been the feedback from clients about your new platform?
I think number one is, and we really appreciate this, is just overall gratitude for being able to continue, and that was the idea, was to really just allow the world of film festivals and independent film exhibition to continue in a meaningful way. And so also audiences, I think, are really appreciative being able to connect with new films and new content. So it's that side of it has really been a lot of fun.
Great. I think unless there are any more questions, I think we can wrap. I just want to thank you both so much for your ideas and your knowledge, and for your creativity and thinking about how we can go forward with these ideas. Thank you both so much for being here.
Thanks,
Thank
Miriam.
Thanks, Miriam. This was really great. Yeah.
Great. And
Thank you,
everyone.
Danette.
Great to see you, Ido.
Well,
great being together in this digital space together. Yeah.
Yes, I wish I could say something that was meaningful, and I feel like I need to work on those skills of us all, of our embodiment, and remembering that we're all in the same space. I'd just like to tell our audience that we'll be back again at 4 p.m. tomorrow on the same platforms for a talk on COVID production practices. 4 p.m. tomorrow, so please join us then. And just one last thank you to Ido and to Danette and to Sharing Space.
Thank you.